Hello everyone, my name is Marcos Ortiz Alvarez. My candidate number is 7080, and today I'll be talking about the physical and mental health aspects of homelessness. To what extent is homelessness caused by external factors? Well, as of 2024, 23 out of every 10,000 Americans are homeless, with nearly 150,000 children experiencing homelessness. Over here we have a graph showing the total homeless population in the US, and we can see that before 2020 it was actually in a decline, but post 2020 it rose 32.5%, going from roughly under 600,000 homeless individuals to all the way over 700,000 individuals. Keeping that in mind, what drives homelessness? Homelessness has a very direct correlation with mental illness, substance abuse, and health. As of 2024, approximately 67% of unsheltered individuals live with a mental health disorder, and more than 40% live with a substance abuse disorder. Homeless individuals are most commonly diagnosed with depression, anxiety, and PTSD. Keeping that in mind, right? Keeping the 40% that live with substance abuse disorders, let's talk about that. Among those who use drugs regularly, 42% reported that they began to use drugs regularly after the first time they experienced homelessness. Over here to the right, we have another graph showing the number of homeless individuals with chronic substance abuse according to their shelter status. Those in transitional housing have only 10,170 homeless individuals that have been reported with chronic substance abuse. We go up to those who are in emergency shelters, which have 30,393 homeless individuals with chronic substance abuse. And the biggest of them all, unsheltered individuals who are out on the street have a reported 54,438 number of homeless individuals with chronic substance abuse. And this just shows that the more unstable the shelter, the more unstable the housing, the more likely they are to use the more likely they are to abuse drugs. And it just shows that they both have a very strong correlation. Behavioral issues. On the street, aggression is a survival tool to keep yourself safe. When a person is suddenly moved into housing, they cannot simply switch off this habit. This leads to conflicts with neighbors or staff, which the system often treats as a lease violation rather than a health crisis, keeping them in a constant fight or flight mode. A 2025 report from the UCSF Benioff Homelessness and Housing Initiative found that 48% of homeless participants met the criteria for complex behavioral needs, which includes regular drug use, heavy alcohol use, or even recent psychiatric hospitalization. Failures in the system. Most failures in the system occur during discharge, as we saw earlier, that they fit under the recent psychiatric hospital. It shows right here, right, that thousands are discharged from psychiatric wards or hospitals with a quote-unquote bus pass and a prayer. Without a stable place to recover, medical wounds get infected and psychiatric conditions relapse within 48 hours, since they're being taken out from this place where they're being supported and helped and being taken care of, to completely somewhat abandoned out on the streets, having to fend off for themselves. Foster care homelessness. About 25% of foster youth become homeless within 2 years of aging out. The system fails to provide the psychological mentoring needed to manage a household alone. According to the National Alliance to End Homelessness 2026, thousands of permanent supportive housing beds are at risk of closing due to sudden funding gaps. When these programs shut down, people who have been stable for years are re-traumatized back onto the streets. Same thing happens when the hospital failure happens. It's the same scenario. Go on about that, right? Solutions. Number one, housing first treats a permanent home as a prerequisite for healthcare rather than a reward for just getting clean. By removing the trauma of survival, this model stabilizes the patient's nervous system, making psychological and physical recovery significantly more effective. And it doesn't have to be a big house, but it just has to be a place where they can call home, where they can feel that they are in their own space, where they feel that they are safe. As we saw earlier, the more unstable the home / shelter, the more likely they are to have a chronic substance abuse. All of these things have a very strong correlation. An example of a solution that has been used before would be in Florida. Miami Street Medicine brings psychiatric and physical care directly to the streets to reach those who have lost trust in traditional hospitals. Their mobile teams stabilize patients in their own environment, building the rapport necessary to eventually move into permanent supportive housing. Example of past solutions. The most successful example of a solution would be, I'm sorry I can't pronounce that, but Housing First program in Finland. This model provides a permanent home immediately while using mobile medical teams to deliver psychiatric and physical care directly to the resident's door rather than requiring them to visit a clinic. It reduced chronic homelessness by over 35% since 2008 and maintains a housing retention rate of around 80%, which is very, very good. Another example of a solution would be St. Vincent's Hospital, Better Health and Housing in Melbourne, Australia. The Better Health and Housing program acts as a halfway house by providing supervised residential beds for homeless patients who are stable enough to leave the hospital but too fragile to survive in the streets alone. So they don't go through that scenario we talked about earlier, that they're quickly taken out of this place where they're being taken care of and similar things to completely having to fend off for themselves so they're not too fragile enough for the streets. In conclusion, the current system often fails because it tries to fix homelessness without fixing the person first. They see homelessness as a big idea and they don't really keep in mind that homelessness comes from mostly the individuals themselves. By helping them and quote unquote fixing them, it could very much benefit, right? Homelessness has its medical emergency that involves both the body and the mind. By looking at successful programs in Finland and Australia, we see that the best solution is to give someone a safe place to live while immediately providing doctors and mental health support. When we treat housing as a part of medical care, we stop the revolving door or cycle of hospitals, jails, streets, which can save both money and lives. And here are all of my sources. Thank you for listening.